Hello there and welcome to this video on shell navigation. In this video, you're going to learn how to create files. You're also going to learn how to rename and move those files to other places in your Linux system. You're also going to learn how to copy them and how to delete them. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump straight in. So here I am in a folder. If I was to print my working directory, which is a command pwd, PWDs, the file manipulation folder. That is where we'll be working today. So if I wanted to create a file that I wanted to start to work on, I would create it using the touch command. Now, here's something about the touch command. The touch command's main purpose is actually to update the timestamps of a file. Let me show you what I mean before we can just create a file. So here I am in my directory at the moment. If I was to check the files that are in my current working directory, I see I have the file called shellnavigation.txt. And we can see it was created on 20th January at 4:24. Now, if I did say touch the same file name, shellnavigation.txt, and then I check again with ll, I'll see that the file now says it's been created at 4:25. That's what I mean when I say that its main job is to update the timestamps. However, if I was clear the terminal, if we can see that I do have one file in my current working directory, its name is shell navigation. But if I wanted to create another file, let's say shelly navigation, and say touch, the same command that we used, say shelly navigation.txt, and I check the files in my current working directory, you can see I created a file called shelly navigation.txt. Now, when a file does not exist, when we use the touch command, that's when it creates a new file. But most of the times people use the touch command just to create new files, just as we have done right now. And that's the first part of the video. We have learned how to create a file. You should go on ahead and practice on how to create the files in your own system. Now let's move on to the second part of the video where we talk about renaming files. If you can see in our current working directory, we have two files, shell navigation and shelly navigation. Let's check at the contents inside the shell navigation first. I'll use that using the cat command, shell navigation.txt, and we can see that inside that file we have the line return some content here. And if we look at the contents inside the shelly navigation file.txt, we can see there's nothing in there. If I was to open it with a text editor like the Helix text editor, we can see that clearly there's no file inside. There's no content inside that file. Good. Let me clear my terminal. With that in place, if the file that I created, which is now shelly navigation.txt, let's say that was a typo and I did want to create a file called shell navigation.txt, but I did not know whether there was an existing file called shell navigation.txt, so we're going to just assume we don't know there's a second file here. The command to actually rename a file is the mv command. MV here stands for move. This same command is also used to move files. But if we use this command and direct the file in the same directory it was, it's just going to rename that particular file. So if we use the move command and we want to rename now the shelly navigation.txt file to shell navigation.txt file, we're assuming we don't know there's another file called shell navigation.txt file. Remember, the shell navigation file had some content inside it. So if we run this command, let's check at let's look at the files in our current working directory, and we can see that we only have one file, the shell navigation.txt file. If we were to open or look at look inside and see what contents this file has by running the cat command, cat shell navigation.txt, we see we've lost the content that was initially there. And what has happened there really is that we've renamed our original file, which was shelly-navigation.txt, and renamed it to shell-navigation.txt. But because there was an existing file, this command overwrote over that file. We overwrote. That the shell navigation file that exists earlier was overwritten by that command. So how can we avoid such mistakes? Because this can be an issue when you want to rename a file. There is an existing file with the same name, but you end up destroying the original file that you had. So let's start by first creating the Shelly navigation file that we had initially, and let's add some content inside our shell navigation file. So we'll just add the content, some content here, and we're going to echo it inside the shell navigation file.txt. If we were to look at the contents of the shell navigation file, we see that it has the line some content here, which is good, but the Shelly navigation file does not have anything. So if we wanted to rename, but we wanted to be safe and not override the contents of our file or any existing file, what we do is use the mv command, but we pass the n option, -n. The -n option tells this command not to overwrite existing files. So mv-n shelly navigation.txt to the name we want to rename it, which is shell navigation.txt. Now let's look at how many files we have in our system, and if we do so, we see we have 2 files. So this command did not run, it did not overwrite the existing file. So that's a nice option to learn about when you're moving your files. Now, we've started by using the mv command for the purposes of renaming a file, and we're just going to rename the Shelly navigation file to shell. So we're just going to rename again. If there is an existing shell file, I do not want to overwrite it, so I'm just going to rename the Shelly navigation file to shell.txt. If I check the contents, I see that I have the shell navigation and I have the shell file correctly renamed. Let me clear that. Now onto the next section. We've not touched on moving files, but just before we do so, let's touch on how to create directories. We've seen how we can create a file. So how can we create a directory or a folder? So there is a specific command for that, and that's make directory, which is mkdir. So in this case, let's create a directory called moved. And if we were to check the contents of our current working directory, we can see that we do have a directory called moved, a file called shell navigation, and another file called shell.txt. So if we wanted to move this file shell.txt inside the moved folder, we're going to use the mv command again, the same command that we used to rename files, but we're just going to move the shell.txt command inside the moved folder, and we write it like that and press enter. If we were to check the contents of the moved folder, and we will do so using this command, we can use ls. I like using my styled ll moved. We can see that we do have a file called shell.txt inside the move folder, and if we were to check the contents of our current working directory, we can see that the shell.txt file is no longer there. It's because it has been moved into the moved folder, which is amazing. Great. Now we've learned how to create files, create directories using the mkdir directory, the make directory command. We've learned how to rename files. We've renamed a file called shell into shelly. We've made the mistake of overwriting an existing file, but we've learned that there's a specific option that can help us, that can prevent us from doing so. And we've moved a file from the current working directory inside the move directory. So let's go into the next option, and we want to copy. Let's say we want to copy files. and we want to create a copy of our existing files. So that's going to be easy. Again, we look at the contents of our working directory. We do have a file called shellnavigation.txt. So let's say we want to copy that file, shellnavigation.txt, into a file called shellnavigation, my typos, navigation1.txt. Press enter. If we look at the contents of working directory at this point, we see we have a new file, shellnavigation-1.txt. We copied the file that we had existing, which was shell navigation, into shellnavigation1.txt. And if you remember, we did have some content inside our shell navigation file. And let's just confirm if the content has also been transferred into the new file. And we're going to look at the contents using this command, cat shellnavigation1.txt, and we see the same content is still inside there, some content here. Good. Now, if we look at our current structure, we see we do have a folder. So let's say I wanted to copy that folder, the folder moved, which has a file inside it, to another folder called moved again. What would I do? So there's a cp command, and the cp command is used to copy stuff. So if we know that and we are like, let's move this folder into a new folder and write cp moved into a folder called moved again, we're going to have a couple of issues here. One is because we're being told, my terminal is telling me -r is not specified. And what -r means, it means recursive. So if we do have files inside the move folder, as we do right now, if we to look at the contents of the move folder, we see we do have one file. If a folder is not empty, if a directory is not empty, we cannot use the cp command just like that to move the contents. So let's specify the recursive command. So if you were to copy using the recursive command, and we're copying the contents, the folder and the contents of the moved command to the moved again folder, what has happened? Let's look at our current working directory. We do have a new folder called move again. If we were to look at the contents of the moved again folder, we would see it has the shell.txt file as well. So this whole file has been moved. This whole file has been moved to a new folder. This whole folder together with its contents have been moved to a folder called moved again with a file inside it. Now, is that what you wanted? So in this case, we achieved what we wanted. We wanted to copy the folder moved together with its contents to a new folder called moved again with the same contents. But what if we wanted to move that folder and put it inside another folder? So we're going to repeat this process. So I'm going to create a directory first called moved inside. And as you can see, we now have 3 directories, moved, moved again, and moved inside. We want to move everything. We want to move the move folder inside the moved inside folder. So we can do cp recursive again, because the moved folder does have some contents inside it. And we moved folder inside the moved inside folder. Now we look at it, same contents. If we look at the contents of the moved inside folder, we have the folder moved inside it. So let me just run that command again, and we can see the contents of the moved inside folder has the moved folder inside it, and the moved folder has the file shell.txt. So you need to understand the behavior or what's happening there. If a folder does not exist, which was the initial case when we were moving moved to moved again, that folder is going to be created and the contents is going to be pasted there. But if a folder does exist and we move the contents inside of that folder, that whole folder goes inside it as well. I hope you've noticed that. I hope you've seen what has happened there. So let's talk about deleting files. let's talk about deleting files and directories. So if you look at this, let's say I realize I don't want that shell navigation 1 txt. I'm happy with my initial shell navigation file. So how can we delete that file? Well, we have the rm command. And let me just clear so that we can have a clean terminal to working. And then I can say rm, the file shell navigation dot navigation1.txt and press enter. If we look at the contents of our directory right now, we do not have the shell navigation 1 file anymore because we've deleted it using the rm command. Let's say we wanted to delete the shell.txt file inside the moved folder. How would we do it? If we wanted to delete that part, again, it's just rm, then we specify the path. By the way, if you're having difficulty understanding these file paths and how to do it, I made a previous video where I talked about relative file paths, absolute file paths, and all of that. Check it out. Now, rm moved, and then the file that we want to delete, which shell.txt, and we press enter. If we were to look at our directory, the folder moved still exists, but the contents of the moved folder are no longer there. It's an empty directory. Now we've learned how to delete a file. Just specify its path after the rm command. What if we wanted to delete a directory? Well, there's a specific command for that. Just like we have the make directory command, mkdir, we have the rmdir, the remove directory command, rmdir. So let's say we've already deleted the contents of our moved folder, which was the shell.txt file that existed there. Now let's remove that folder. We can just use rmdir, remove directory, moved. And if we look at the contents, the folder does not exist anymore. The directory does not exist anymore. But that was a roundabout way to delete that directory. Do we have to always delete the file first and then delete the directory? You know, if I have to ask that, the answer is no. There's a better way to do it. And the better way to do it is not using the rmdir. It's because the rmdir, the remove directory command, is only used to remove empty directories. But if your directory does have content and you still want to remove it, you can use this command. So we can go back to the rm command, and we're going to pass the trusty recursive option, rm-r. This recursive function is going to help us remove the contents together with that directory. So in this case, we want to remove the directory moved again. We remember, let's just check. ll moved again does have a file inside it. It's not an empty directory. It has the file shell.txt. So let's try and remove that. So we're going to say rm-r moved again and press enter. For to check the contents of our current working directory, we do not have that directory, nor do we have the files that were inside of it. So the -r, the recursive one, is one step to delete a directory together with its contents recursively. Everything inside that directory is going to be deleted, but you really need to be careful with that command. You really need to be careful with that command. You need to know, what exactly do I want to delete? And I'll just illustrate what I mean. So if we look at our directory right now, we have the moved inside folder. If we look at the contents of the moved inside folder, we can see that there's another directory called moved. And inside that directory, we do have a file called shell.txt. So if we wanted to delete the moved folder, which is inside the move inside folder, but not the whole move inside folder, how would we go about it? Here's the answer. So we're going to use the rm-r again recursively, and we're going to go into the move inside folder, but be careful, please be careful not to leave your command here, because this is going to delete the shell.txt file inside the move folder. It's going to delete the moved folder, and it's going to delete the moved inside folder. What you need to do is add that folder that you want it to stop. Like the last folder that is specified there is the last folder that's going to be deleted. The last folder that's going to be deleted. So if I do it like this, I expect that my shell.txt file inside the moved folder will be deleted, and the moved folder is going to be deleted. Let's see if it plays nice, and that's exactly what we get. If we look at the contents, yes, we do still have the moved inside folder, and the contents of the moved inside folder, we have nothing. The moved inside folder is empty. Let me illustrate the previous example, and I'm just going to create a folder and a file inside the moved inside folder. So let's make directory inside the moved inside folder called moved, and then create a file called shell, which is going to be in the move inside folder and in the move folder as well, called shell.txt. If we look at the contents of the moved inside folder, we do have that folder right now. And if we look at the contents of the moved folder, there's a shell.txt file inside there. If I was to run the command like rm-r with the recursive function, and just wrote moved inside, press enter. If we look at the contents of our working directory right now, the shell.txt file, the move folder, and the move inside folder were all deleted. So just be very careful when you're handling folders like that. And that's it for this video. But before we go, let's do a quick recap. And just before the recap, if you love this video, if you learned something new or just enjoyed or would like to support me, please like and subscribe the video. It helps me a lot. It's a great way to support me. And now to the recap. We've looked at how to create files, and in that case we've looked at the touch command. And I've said that the main reason, or like the main mission of the touch command, is actually to update the timestamps. So if a file does exist and you write touch the file name, it's just going to update the timestamp on that file. But if the file does not exist, then it creates a new file. We've looked at ways in which we can rename files using the mv command. And we have seen that if we rename a file to a name belonging to a file that already exists in that directory, then it's going to be overwritten. And there's a flag, or rather there's an option to help you avoid that. And that was the -n option. That was the -n option. That helps us not to overwrite files that we're renaming to. And we've still using the mv command, we've learned that we can move files from one location to another location, to a different directory. We've learned about the make directory command, which makes directories. Just as you've extended, it creates a new directory. And the remove directory command, rmdir command, which removes a directory, but only removes an empty directory. If you wanted to remove a directory that has contents inside it, we go back to the rm command, which is also used to remove files, but we pass in the recursive function. The recursive option. We pass in the recursive option -r, and by doing so, it deletes the contents and the folder itself. But you need to be very careful with that recursive option, and be sure that the folder, the last folder that is in your command is the last folder you want deleted, or otherwise you can end up removing a lot of files that you do not need. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please like and subscribe. It's going to make my day, honestly. And watch the other videos still on the same topic, shell navigation and also programming in C. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.